Welcome. This is Leading with Spirit, the show that gives you an in-depth look at topics like what it takes to navigate your spiritual journey, how to heal yourself and grow your spiritual gifts, and balanced practices to expand your business and your spiritual leadership. I'm your host, Spirit Bird, shamanic teacher, healer, and author, here to guide you on your journey to becoming your most potent spiritual leader. Are you ready for your spiritual business to finally take off? Or maybe you're working a new idea and you're not really sure if it's going to work or not, and you're running up against some fears. Maybe you've been working on your spiritual business for a long time and it feels like you just can't really make some moves. What I want to go over today is a spiritual business myth busting. I've talked about this before here, but one of the things that I see that's really common and that I experience myself on probably a regular basis too, is that I hold myself back by separating myself from others. Basically, what that means is I look at what someone else is doing, and then I make myself wrong for not being as good as them or doing something in the way that they do it. And this is an especially big trap if you are working with social media or just on social media at all. But this existed long before social media as well. The practice of comparing ourselves to others and either trying to be like them to get to where they are, or where we think that they are. Just remember that what people say is not always true. And usually they're going to show you the good stuff and not everything that they're experiencing. So this has been around for a really long time. And what I want you to know these basic things about assumptions you can make about other people's businesses so that you don't have to do the same thing and slow yourself down and assume that you need these things for you to start a profitable spiritual business. And then I want to share with you some of the steps that you can take after that. So first of all, myth busting, what you need. These are things that I don't have. I don't have a lot of professional photography. I've used some a little bit, to be fair. I had a friend come out and do a trade with me years ago and take a ton of pictures, and he happened to be very good. I still use a lot of those photos. And so what a lot of people do is they maybe do this like once a year, but you don't have to go have professional photography for you to start your business. And actually, this is something that I see hold people up a lot too, is they're like, okay, I'm moving my business online. So now I need to take pictures and I have to get a professional photo. So, which can be expensive. Photography is a lot of work, especially if you're good, and are good at bringing out the essence of what somebody wants to portray. So a lot of people will feel like, oh man, I got to spend money right off the bat. You absolutely do not need to do that. You can have a friend take a picture. You can do a selfie, just make sure it's clear and that you are happy that you're doing something you want to be doing, or that you're like actually dressed like yourself rather than imitating someone else. Don't spend time and effort and a ton of energy perfecting this really glamorous, beautiful, like photo shoot, or feel like you need to get a $3,000 dress and go walk around in the woods for you to have successful business. I know we see a lot of that online. That is not the reason that people are successful. Now, that might draw attention, or it might portray their essence, which can be helpful, but it's not the reason that they're successful. And it's not the reason. And if you don't have professional photography, it's not the reason that your business isn't successful. So you can just drop that and not let that hold you back. And then when you feel inspired to include it, but don't make it a have to or a should. Another thing that I don't have is a healing center outside of my home. And actually, most of my life, my business was done remotely, the majority of it. When I first started, before I ever actually thought I would do this for work, but I had some people requesting to work with me through word of mouth. And I was like, well, here we go. I used my home for those. They were intense, but at the same time, fairly casual. I wasn't trying to make a business or do this all the time. I just got requests. And so I said yes. And then my business was built remotely. So I did all of my work online or virtually or over the phone, because for me, that's an incredibly potent place to work. And I hear this a lot. I mean, I love in-person work too. So this isn't to like put it down or say that this is better or worse. But I get this misconception from people a lot that work is better or more potent or more real when you're in person. And it's just not true. It's just not true. And actually, I found for me that my clients tend to get better results when they get great results when we're in person too, but it's just a myth. It's just a myth. Oftentimes, people are able to drop in better when we're actually just working over the phone because it's energy work. So it's not like you have to be in close proximity. And while there is some benefit and power, some people really work better with their hands and being in person with hands. And I do some of that work too. My most potent work isn't communicated that way. And so when you are on the other phone, on the phone, actually, I usually would invite you to close your eyes and actually reduce the number of senses that you have online so we can actually just be with the energy and what's happening versus the senses and their interpretation of what's happening. So it's almost a distraction to be in person. Anyway, the point is that I didn't start by having a physical space. There's a lot of overhead for that physical space. And oftentimes, if you're starting a business, unless you happen to just right place, right time, if you don't already have clientele, it's going to be even more challenging for you to start a business by starting with a physical location first. So just know that, and I hear this a lot from healers, as they have their vision of wanting to have a retreat center and they think that's the first step, and it's not. Your first step is getting training. Your first step is building your confidence, understanding how to work with people, understanding how to deliver your spiritual gifts and your unique medicine, and having some strategy behind how to grow, an audience or clientele first, typically. Another thing that I don't have is special equipment. All of my entire business was done using a regular laptop, a regular phone. I didn't even use a microphone until recently. And so while that's a nice thing to have, while it's nice to have high quality professional things, you really don't need it. There might be a point in your business when you're scaling or growing where it can be really helpful, but you really don't need it. And most of my work has been done in my home without a big fancy backdrop or without making it look like I'm in some crazy mystical place, because my home is infused with spirit. My home is infused with the medicine. My home is integrated into that part of my life. So the energy is there, and I don't need to spend time or money investing in something to try to make it look like something different, right? I don't have to try to make it look fancy for it to be powerful and potent. And again, if you're ready for it, if it's a step, that's great, but don't hold yourself back by looking at other people and thinking, man, I really want to do a spiritual business, but I don't have the money for the special lights that I need and the fancy cameras that I need to record, or, the big crystals that I want for me to be able to do this properly. It's just not true. Don't make up that story that that's what you have to have a successful spiritual business, and then latch onto it. And, basically you're creating a victim story of they have a thing that I can't have, and that's the only way for me to get what I want. And so sad, don't waste your time with that. Just know you don't need these things. And the last thing that I didn't have when I started my spiritual business is a background in marketing and advertising. This is something that I learned while I was offering my work, and it was really important. And I say that I didn't have that coming in because sometimes, again, when we're comparing ourselves to others, when we're seeing other people that maybe appear to be really successful, you might think that they are only doing they're just doing the spiritual stuff, and not realize that they actually have a background in sales. So they have sales kind of infused in everything that they do. So from the surface level, it might look like they're just being spiritual and somehow people are just finding them. And that's not exactly the full picture. So just know that. And you don't have to have a background if you don't know the marketing or advertising and sales part. It's okay. That's why you hire people, or you get a coach to teach it to you, right? This is just something that you learn as you would in any industry. No matter what kind of job or work you're doing, you're always going to be learning new parts of it to improve yourself and to improve what you're doing. And the same is true for your spiritual business. Now, what I do have that I would attribute to my success, one, clear offer, shaman school, Earth Embodiment. I mean, at this point, I have a couple, but it was I spent the first several years working on my one primary offer before I brought in new stuff, and I had laser focus on this one offer. One, it was my whole world. It was everything that I'd ever wanted to create. It was everything that I wanted to be doing. And I was so passionate about how I help people through shaman school that it was easy to want to talk about it all the time. But I do recommend, if you're just starting, start with one. It's not required that you can only ever offer one thing, but it's really helpful if you're just beginning, because what happens is if you give yourself permission to have more than one offer right off the bat, you will find yourself having trouble staying accountable or not having the proper follow through that you really need. You might post like once or twice, you don't get the result you want, and then you stop, and then you're like, oh, it must be my offer. I changed. No, that's probably not the case. So what I do have is a really clear offer. I know for shaman school, I know who it's for. I know what I'm going to help them with. I know what I'm going to help them do, and I know how I'm going to help them do it. Right. So this is, the most important piece of my spiritual work and my spiritual business. If you don't know that yet, if you're not clear on that for yourself yet, you need to start there. Number 2, confidence in my work. I have confidence in my work. That doesn't mean that I know everything. That doesn't mean that I never make a mistake. That doesn't mean that I don't ever have people that are unhappy with me, right? But what I do know is all the way in the depths of my soul what this work really is. This means not only do I deliver really potent medicine because I have my confidence rooted completely in my body, completely in my heart, my whole heart and soul 100% believes in what I do. So not only is that part of the process in helping me deliver potent medicine, but it helps me navigate the ups and downs that you're going to run into in your spiritual business, whether that's from naysayers, like, excuse me, I don't mean this to be offensive to white dudes, but I cannot tell you how many white dudes come at me with spiritual shaming, that have like this belief that because they're a man, when they see a woman doing this work, or if they see somebody that's like cute, doing the like dressed up cute, or actually sharing your work and advertising and being out there, I don't know what it triggers in them, but I cannot tell you how many white dudes that don't know me at all got some shit to say about what I'm doing that don't know me at all. And I mean, like 90% of the naysayers I encounter in my work, that's where it comes from. And it doesn't really matter where it's coming from. The point is you have to have confidence in your work, because there are going to be people that talk shit to you. There are going to be people that you trigger. There are going to be people that, don't like what you're doing. They're going to be people that find what you're doing to be dangerous or threatening to them. And they are going to have some shit to say to you. And if you don't have that like deep soul connection to what you're doing and why, and that 100% belief in what you're doing, you're going to be going back and forth all the time. One, having exchanges with them. Like now, most of the time I can tell if it's worth engaging or not. And it's not really worth my energy. I don't need to explain myself to anybody, especially somebody who's just triggered and wanting to make me wrong no matter what I do or say and doesn't know me at all. So you have to have that confidence or that follow through, and so that they don't knock you off of your alignment and your path. Again, because it's going to happen. Another thing that I do have that has attributed to my success in my spiritual business is I had a previously failed business. I didn't just like one day have shaman school show up with 100% clarity and then just bring it forward without any problems and just like know how to do everything. I had another business that I ran for years. For years, I ran it. And it was constantly on the cusp where it wasn't quite losing money, but it wasn't quite making me money. And like opportunities were always like right around the corner, but it never fully broke through. And I followed it for years. And I finally gave in the towel because actually I started to see that I wasn't in alignment with it in the first place. But even if I was, I've had a second, I wouldn't call it failed business, but business that I wasn't in alignment with. When I stopped, my first business was a body care company, all natural body care company, beautiful products, beautiful business partner, made every mistake you can make in the book, every mistake you can make in the book, not having a clear niche, changing what we were doing all the time, having too many products out, all the things, not understanding how to use marketing to leverage your company, being bad at sales, inability to receive everything I did wrong. And that's how I learned. So it wasn't even the idea that was wrong. It was just that we needed to learn how to run a business. Now I took all of that information and brought it into my next business, which was meditation coaching, which is also, it was great, but also wasn't really fully in alignment with what I wanted to do. It was closer, but I chose that because I thought it's what people could understand and what people wanted. Like I thought I had a bigger crowd, so it would be easier for me to do. And so I went into it with like, what would be like easier to sell versus like, what does my heart and soul actually want to offer? So yeah, I wouldn't call the second one quite a failed business. It was more like it was the foundation that launched me into, well, this is actually what I want to do. So that was a huge part of my journey. So know that if you've had a failed business, celebrate. I have yet to talk to an entrepreneur that is, quote unquote, successful that hasn't had multiple failed businesses. And then the last thing I want to say about what I do have that's attributed to my success in spiritual business is a willingness to get it wrong, to just put myself out there and try some things. And the more that I do that, the more that I do occasionally get things wrong, the easier it is to not be afraid when I get things wrong, which means the easier it is for me to put things out and get it right, to nail it. So like speak directly to the people I want to speak. But I didn't do it by like hiding out and cultivating until I felt like everything was perfect and I couldn't get it wrong. And honestly, there's a place where a lot of us have this fear. We have the fear of failing or of getting things wrong. And there is a lot of spiritual work that you can do to help you with this. And I guide people through that spiritual work. I mean, I've seen incredible things happen from us doing the inner work around fear of failure and getting things wrong. And I've watched so many of my students go from like hiding out to like launched into their full career just by working some of the spiritual ends of this part. And there's part of me that still knows, though, the only way to fully heal from your fear of getting things wrong is to get it wrong, is to make the mistakes, because then you will see that you survived, that it's okay, that you lived, and then you will be less afraid to make them, which means there's more opportunity for you to get it right. And this is all really important when you're bringing your spiritual business forward, right? Because it is so easy to see what appears, look at somebody and it seems like they're successful. And so it's very easy to compare yourself to them or feel like you need to do it the way they're doing it, or that if only you had the qualities or the exposure or the money or the materials that they had, then your spiritual business could happen. And just know that that's not true. And again, that's not helping you. So if you have beliefs about that your look isn't good enough, that your vibe isn't good enough, that what you do is too specific and people won't understand, like all of these are sabotaging beliefs. It means you have some inner work to do. We always will have inner work to do. If you're running into a place where you feel like you haven't really started, or you're starting and it's moving slow, there is more inner work to do, right? And this is, again, one of the reasons that I created Shaman School, both to help you grow your ability to help other people and grow your gifts so you can do more and work with spirit and work in flow, and to help you navigate these spots in your spiritual business that are either blocks or leaks or are holding you back. But you should know that it's not a matter, like if you're feeling like you have lack in who you are, that is the number one place to look. That's where your inner work matters most. All of the other bells and whistles that go along with running a business that are definitely important, like, having social media, it's not required, but it's definitely important, especially if you're doing an online business. Again, you can do this without social media, but it's very helpful. The bells, having a funnel, having a freebie, having some of the tools and strategies that are really helpful for having a long-term successful, sustainable business. These are all important. These are all really important, but they're not required. And there are workarounds for a lot of these things too, especially if you're just starting. And I want to be clear about this. While they're not required, it will benefit you tremendously from being willing to invest in yourself or invest in somebody that can help you with some of these pieces surrounding your spiritual business. Even if it's just a piece of tech. I've worked with a lot of people that they're clear. They're ready to go. They're feeling clear. They're like, yes, I know I have my vision. I see who I want to help. I know my why. I know it's my spiritual gifts. Like I'm feeling confident and ready to help people. All the things are in place, but then they need to get a subscription to, like a landing page subscription, like ClickFunnels or Lead Pages or something like that. And suddenly it's $50 a month and they completely shut down. You've got to be willing to invest in yourself. You have to understand that, there are workarounds to help you get started, especially if you're working on a tight budget, but it's better for you to invest in it and to change your thinking and to think about how this is going to help you move your business forward instead of how this costs you money. To remind yourself that, this will help you stay motivated and focused to bring in a new client and help them instead of like, oh no, I'm already losing money doing this. Right. And also if you're going into your business worrying about every single nickel and dime. And again, a budget is important. You need to know what your bottom line is. You need to know how much things are going to cost. You're going to need to know how many clients you need to sign or at what price for your business to be profitable. Like you definitely need to know that stuff. But it still comes down to like, if your mindset is nickeling, diming every penny, that's a place that you need to fix too, that you need to work on that. Because somewhere in your system, you don't have a belief that you will be successful. And you need that belief to be able to move forward. Otherwise, you're going to feel like everybody's mistreating you or everybody's doing everything wrong. You're going to need to know how to direct people in the future. If you're just starting, it's probably just going to be you for a while. It's okay. You don't need to know how to run a team. You don't need to know all of these fancy things. You got to take it one step at a time. Just get started. And again, when it comes down to it, just know that these are all things that these are all myths that a lot of people actually even try to sell you that you need to have. If you don't have a funnel, you can't have a successful business. If you don't have the pictures, you can't do it. If you don't have the special equipment, if you don't know how to do this particular kind of strategy, like some of it's helpful, but it's not required. So if you are looking to grow your spiritual business, please remember that you've got to follow the vision that you have. You have to take it one step at a time. Don't try to create your entire business and then launch it. Take it one step at a time. You need to know to slow down. It's okay to go slow. You don't have to, that doesn't mean it has to be years. But if you're finding yourself getting overwhelmed, you need to slow down and take a step back and do it one step at a time, right? You have to know that the vision you do have for a reason, and you have to believe it. You have to know that there is strategy that can support you. It's not 100% required, but it is extremely important and extremely helpful. And if you are resisting it, or if you have hired a coach and you're not listening to what they're telling you to do, there's something to heal around that. Because learning how to do the marketing and advertising part is an incredibly important part about your business. It's an incredibly healing journey to go on. And it's extremely helpful for you for a sustainable long-term business. So you need to know how to create and generate leads, and you need to know how to keep track of them. You need to learn oftentimes like a variety of different kinds of marketing tools, because there isn't a right or wrong way to do it, but you might be called to explore certain things to see if they really are in alignment for you, or to see what works for you, to see what's a match. Again, it comes back to also being willing to get it wrong, to try some things. So you can it's hard to find out what you like if you don't try things, or you don't know what you don't like, right? And once you start to learn these marketing tools, then you can begin to pick and choose versus bypassing. It's like there are times where I'm able to do more marketing that's like feels like kind of artful and very spiritual to me. but that's only because I actually went through the part of like the 3D marketing. It's only because I healed my journey with that I'm able to now do something that's a little bit beyond that, right? You don't get to skip over it. That's spiritual bypassing, right? And make sure you do your own inner work to be able to enjoy sales. A lot of it is coming down to your belief. Like you've got to believe in what you're doing. If you do, it's not hard to sell because you know how valuable it is. And if you don't, then there's some work to do there, right? You have to have structure. You have to have some kind of structure in place so that your business can move forward. Again, one step at a time. It might just start by you sharing some of your spiritual side a little bit more openly. That might be what all you need to do to start. But at some point, you have to have structure. And even if your first step is sharing more of your spiritual side, your structure could be simply your commitment to doing it once a week. You need to be committed. You need to have follow through. You can't do the thing where you try it a few times, decide it didn't work, and then go back to square one. You have to follow through. And then also do realize that there are outrageous claims out there, that there are people that have had incredible success in their business, but oftentimes they're not sharing the reality behind what it actually took. They might say, like I made this much in this many months. I hit, 6 figures a month in my first year of business, but they didn't tell you that they worked, had 3 failed businesses before that, or that they had another business, or that they had 1 million followers when they first launched, or that they did just one big launch and their 6-figure month was just 1 month during that year, right? There's again, I mean, all of this, like some of the scenarios, it's not that they're not true, but just know that some of them are manipulated to make sales. That does happen. Just because you sell doesn't mean that you're manipulating people, but sometimes people do. And so know that if you are feeling either one, bad about yourself because you haven't grown so fast, please do not. Please know that, again, there's a lot of information that people don't share about their process. And also know that, that some people are just not going to be straightforward. And some people are going to be in situations that have allowed them to grow really far, really fast. And there's nothing wrong with a slow growth and slow sustainable business. In fact, it's actually very, very healthy. Not only does it help you have a business that will last longer and require less output, it usually often means that you have a more balanced life, which is really what a lot of us want. And so sometimes these more outrageous claims are true, but they're the byproduct of like this big outpour of energy followed by a big collapse. And you may not actually want that. I know like seeing the dollar signs sounds exciting, but you may not actually want the methods that get people there. So it's really important to realize that what you see on internet and social media is not always the whole truth. And then just come back to yourself, come back to your vision, come back to taking it one step at a time, having a little structure, and, having that why deeply embedded in your system, having the 100% belief in what you do, so that there isn't a whole lot that you need to overcome to share why you're here, who you help, and what you do. Thank you so much for joining me today. Have you been hearing the call to expand your spiritual gifts and step into your next level of conscious leadership? If you're a coach, healer, or a spiritual leader, you can learn more about Shaman School and growing your spiritual business on our website, HoltonHealingArts.com. or send me a DM at Holton Healing Arts. Welcome to today's Member Query episode, where we explore questions about spiritual paths, intuitive gifts, growing a spiritual business, and shamanism. Do you have a question for us? Send us a DM at Holton Healing Arts. Sasha in our Leading with Spirit Facebook group asks, how do I start a spiritual business? And if you're new to the show, then I definitely recommend you look back at some of our first few episodes where I dive a little bit more in depth to the whys behind growing a spiritual business. Today, I want to share with you 2 things not to do and what you can do instead when you're starting a spiritual business. So first of all, when you're called to do a spiritual business, that might be for 2 reasons. or a combination of the two. Either one, you have some spiritual work that you're ready to share, or there is somewhere in your life that you are dissatisfied. And so the longing comes from that and can sometimes mask an underlying issue that wants to be healed. Or, of course, it can be a combination of these two things. Now, what a lot of people do when they start is they begin by trying to come up with like a modality. They try to figure out what is the modality that I want to teach and use. The other big mistake that people make is they start by creating a storefront before they even know what's actually going in the store. And I say this metaphorically, so that can mean like actually getting an office. Like a lot of people will jump into trying to get an office or a location for the business, but they don't actually have a clear understanding of the offer. And more importantly, they don't have a clear understanding of the why, the deep why, not just because they want to get out of their 9 to 5, not just because they learned something and it helped them in their life and now they want to share it with others, but like the cosmic why, the underlying why that's related to your multidimensional purpose. And so when I say they get a storefront first, that can be a storefront or that can be a website. So this is another mistake that I see a lot of people make. Websites are amazing tools for you and your business. So are physical locations. But a lot of people, that's the biggest mistake I probably see, is people jump into that first and they invest their time and money into creating that before they even actually know their why, their deep why, and the offers that they actually have that they want to share. And that's one of the reasons that I created Shaman School. It wasn't just to teach advanced shamanic tools and how to use them to when you're working with others, but it's also because there's this big gap that I see in the spiritual training world where they only teach you spiritual tools and they don't give you some of that 3D guidance, or in the business end of things where they tell you that just, the right copy or the right pictures or the right SEO will sell your business when you actually don't even know what you are doing yet. I mean, you might be confident, but you don't know what your unique offer is. And this is what Shaman School helps bring these two things together. So you get to have a deep understanding. So your deeper purpose, your multidimensional purpose will be exposed, and you'll see beyond just the first couple layers of this work, just the first couple layers of, that you're excited that you went through some healing and now you want to teach other people. Well, everybody does. Everybody, that's not really different than religion. When somebody wakes up to a religion and discovers God for the first time and they want to introduce everyone to God, that's great. And there's more for you than just that. And so if you can get connected to that, this is what you should do instead of the first two things I just named. This is connecting deeply with that why, because without that why, you won't have a good foundation in your spiritual business. And then it doesn't matter what steps you take, because there isn't really like a right or wrong way for your next steps. And I have lots of guides on this podcast. My spiritual business kit is a great place to start with how to do this. But again, if you don't have that underlying why, none of that stuff matters, because no matter what you do in your spiritual business, you're going to run into challenges. And if you're not deeply plugged in to that higher purpose, it will be very challenging to continue to go and to follow through for yourself. So that's a quick answer to how to start a spiritual business. And again, my spiritual business kit is a great place to start if you're just playing around with this. It's going to give you lots of tools and workbooks and information to help you kind of start to feel what this would actually even look like if you're brand new to it. Thanks so much.
I hope you enjoyed this episode of Leading with Spirit. If you did, please share the link for this episode with your biggest takeaway, tagging me at Holton Healing Arts. It would also support me if you subscribed and left a rating and review of the show so we can support more people living their highest purpose. Until next time, journey on.